So, like, what is it with Russian authors and just never imagining a better future? It's probably something to do with the cold and the dark, and that does not bode too well for me here in Minnesota. Hello, and welcome back to A Trip Book Reviews. And to start off, sorry I was gone for 2.5 months again. I just explained this over on A2A Politics, but I don't know how many viewers are on both channels. Basically, we had a roommate moving in, and we had to rearrange a lot of things, move a lot of things around, this whole process. And in the shuffle of it all, my backdrop, not the quilt itself, very awesome quilt, by the way, but the setup for the actual backdrop itself. Whoa, the brightness is getting weird when I do that. But the setup got lost, and we didn't find it until just a few days ago. And I was not about to record in this dingy, dirty apartment, so I had to wait. But not like I have enough viewers to justify maintaining a schedule that much anyway. But now we're here, and I recently, I guess not so recently now, a few months ago, got done reading the Foundation Trilogy by Isaac Asimov, a Russian-born but American author. Obviously, this book is actually 3 in 1, given that it's a trilogy. These books include Foundation, Foundation and Empire, and Second Foundation. These books were foundational additions to the genre of science fiction as a whole, pun not intended, but ultimately accepted. Asimov, then, is a very prominent name. Let's understand who he is. Isaac Asimov was born in Russia in either the first 2 days of 1920 or the last 2 months of 1919, and we aren't entirely sure what date exactly. His family emigrated to the United States when he was 3. This gave him a very distinctive name in the United States at the time, something he preferred to use rather than a pseudonym. He taught himself to read at the age of 5, and then proceeded to teach his younger sister how to read. Obviously, his interest in literature was present from a young age. This makes a lot of sense, given how prolific his career was. He wrote or edited over 500 books in his career, and apparently over 90,000 letters and postcards, which is absolutely insane. And, of course, he helped solidify the genre of science fiction, according to the Wikipedia page. And yeah, I'm using Wikipedia, deal with it. I'm not writing a biography for every video here. He was considered one of the big 3 of sci-fi during his life, including alongside him Robert A. Heinlein, the author of works such as Starship Troopers and Stranger in a Strange Land, and Arthur C. Clarke, author of 2001: A Space Odyssey, and co-wrote the screenplay for the movie. So, yeah, Asimov's work was incredibly influential, and most of all was the Foundation Trilogy. Let's talk about it. This is probably my 4th favorite book of all time now. Dead serious. The only books which outperform it, in my opinion, are The Complete Fiction of H.P. Lovecraft, The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene, and Positive Psychology, The Science of Human Happiness and Flourishing. And then coming in at number 4 of all time is the Foundation Trilogy by Isaac Asimov. Quite an eclectic bunch. Throughout my reading, I have had nothing but praise for this book, or technically these 3 books I was fortunate enough to get in one cover. Oh, and on that note, damn, this cover is so beautiful. It is another one of those Barnes & Noble collector's editions, specials, whatever. And a link to it will be in the description below if you're interested in this copy specifically. So yeah, of course the cover is beautiful, same with the inside of it here, as you've seen, and it has gilded edges and all of that jazz. Now, I won't lie, I'd prefer it more stylized and unique than this. I mean, this is kind of just generic space, but it's still really cool regardless. The ratio of praise to scorn has not changed in the time since I finished reading a few months ago now, after it has had time to settle. There are only 2 markings I have annotated in this book, which do not mean either this line is so good, or I really like this, or damn, I really, really like this. Those 2 lonesome markings, the dark blue and the more orangish than pink at the beginning, represent this seems like a core concept and this is funny, respectively. Now, why do I like it so much? That's harder to answer. It's not my usual style of book. It's science fiction, of course, which I'm not exactly a stranger to, but it's not written like that. The writing style is very blunt, with very short and stout sentences. Descriptions are simple, if they're present at all. The dialogue is almost all the same throughout all 750 pages, which, yeah, it's a long book, and I should add that it takes a good amount of time to read. The same meaning it is very blunt and to the point as well, very formulaic. But unlike Fractal Noise, which is the last review I did, this is an incredible benefit to this book. I don't know why. Normally, I prefer crazy writing, sentences that drag you along a roller coaster of inflection and syntax. This book does the opposite, and it is beautiful. I think part of it comes down to the juxtaposition. The word choice is not simple or blunt. In fact, during the time I was reading this, I was on vocabulary.com, genuinely for the fun of it, and practicing a list of 300 alleged difficult SAT words. The amount of words that list and this book have in common is insane. I guarantee you that if it truly is from the SAT, then the SAT itself drew heavy inspiration from the Foundation Trilogy. Who the hell uses words like quixotic? Asimov does. And there is a second juxtaposition, with the concepts his words are exploring. Such high and lofty concepts like the overwhelming psychological force of human history all diverging into one single future by necessity of that psychology. That's such a good narrative technique. And simple writing doesn't mean the prose doesn't possess intense pulchritude either. Like this line, toss a coin or take a guess. Composed exclusively of monosyllables and balancing two ideas upon the fulcrum of a fanboy, and indeed doing so with the same structure on either side and making them seem equivalent all at the same time, that's impressive. It's a good line. And even if that line isn't immediately obviously fantastic, it is clear how good it is upon inspection. Genuinely, if I were to read you every single line I liked in this book, I might as well read the whole thing to you. But that won't stop me from picking some favorites. For example, in the beginning of Chapter 9, the second book in the trilogy, there is a description of Trantor, the capital of the Galactic Empire. And in the center of an open cluster of 10,000 stars, whose light tore to shreds the feebly encircling darkness, there circled the huge imperial planet Trantor. But it was more than a planet. It was the living pulse beat of an empire of 20 million stellar systems. It had only one function, administration. One purpose, government, and one manufactured product, law. The entire world was one functional distortion. There was no living object on its surface but man, his pets, and his parasites. No blade of grass or fragment of uncovered soil could be found outside the 100 square miles of the imperial palace. No fresh water outside the palace grounds existed but in the vast underground cisterns that held the water supply of a world. The lustrous, indestructible, incorruptible metal that was the unbroken surface of the planet was the foundation of the huge metal structures that mazed the planet. They were structures connected by causeways, laced by corridors, cubbyholed by offices, basemented by the huge retail centers that covered square miles, penthoused by the glittering amusement world that sparkled into life each night. One could walk around the world of Trantor and never leave that one conglomerate building, nor see the city. A fleet of ships greater in number than all the war fleets the Empire had ever supported landed their cargoes on Trantor each day to feed the 40 billions of humans who gave nothing in exchange but the fulfillment of the necessity of untangling the myriads of threads that spiraled into the central administration of the most complex government humanity had ever known. 20 agricultural worlds were the granary of Trantor. A universe was its servant. And I'll read to you the 4 green markings as well, which represent the I really like this line. You evidently want to stir up civil war. I do? There are other sticks in the fire, and it won't require much stirring, I can tell you. Oh, I missed one. I skipped ahead a little bit. Uh-oh. The appearance of strength is all about you. It would seem to last forever. However, Mr. Advocate, the rotten tree trunk, until the very moment when the storm blast breaks it in two, has all the appearance of might it ever had. The storm blast whistles through the branches of the Empire even now. Listen with the ears of psychohistory, and you will hear the creaking. Skipping ahead a bit, we have of the rough and raucous warlords who ruled in iron the worlds they had gained in blood. I really like that line. And saving the best for last. From her waist as a source, she was drowned in a pale, streaming luminescence of shifting color that drew itself over her head in a flashing coronet of liquid fire. It was as if someone had torn the aurora borealis out of the sky and molded it into a cloak. Those are beautiful lines, especially that last one, and I need to find a way to reference them in my own writing sometime. The dialogue is completed with similar expertise. Every back and forth is expertly crafted in ways I don't really know how to put in words myself. Nearly every conversation is a clashing between opposing forces. This makes sense. I've neglected to mention it in detail yet, but again, the whole of the trilogy is about the conglomeration of psychohistoric forces converging into one definite path for a better future. Thus, in every conversation, two people want two different things, and that dialogue is how they achieve it. By necessity and by will, one person achieves what they want. The way Asimov is able to construct such fascinating problems and obstacles to each character and the way the individuals interact is astonishing. In a way so few manage to achieve, no detail is irrelevant. Every word matters. I believe Asimov was able to do this because our orientation isn't really tied to characters much. Sure, we follow a given character at every point in the book, but at any given chapter, we could jump 50 years in the future, or a given character will only have a single chapter detailing their thoughts and then never get that again. The orientation is on the grand design of the galactic events playing out over 1,000 years. In that way, Asimov doesn't need to worry about fleshing out each character, divesting what they think at all times, how they feel, or many of the in-between moments of character development or exploration. The audience isn't positioned to care about the individuals. The book makes this very apparent, that psychohistory is not applicable to individuals. But on the scale of quintillions of people, the laws are as immutable as that of physical sciences. There's a line in here about that, about how the only reason physical sciences are more predictable than psychology is that there are more atoms than people. Speaking of psychohistory, I suppose I should probably explain that a little bit. Psychohistory is essentially psychology turned into a mathematical science. Using psychological mathematical equations, you can predict human behavior when there's enough people. This is so damn cool. I would love to see more takes on this concept. If anyone knows any other media which utilizes something similar, please let me know. Anyway, one man, Harry Seldon, essentially perfected psychohistory. He saw that the galactic empire, which had been around for 12,000 years at this point, was falling. This was irreversible, and within 300 years the capital would collapse. According to the calculations, the period between the first empire and when a second empire could rise would be 30,000 years. 30,000 years of suffering and barbarism. But Seldon could make just the right changes to reduce this period of Hollywood anarchy to 1,000 years. Thus, he set up the titular Foundation at just the right time and at just the right place so that the overwhelming force of history and psychology inevitably brought about this benevolent future. Running with this theme, so many characters throughout all time periods always believe yesteryear to be better, stronger, the golden age. That the men of yesterday were better than that of today. It is quite an interesting facet of psychology, which is befitting a story built around psychohistory. Calling it out, too, an angle very few take. A worship of the past and a stagnation. That's one of the most pressing elements driving the whole story. So, the audience knows that, in some sense, the end of the book is preordained. We are here to witness how that happens, how these forces converge to force only one outcome. Ordinarily, destiny and prophecies make a work less interesting. If we know the good guy is going to win no matter what, there is less, but not zero, interest in seeing them win. That doesn't apply here. Maybe that's just me, but we know psychohistory is not infallible. New variables can always be introduced. And in the second book, this happens, but I'm not gonna spoil that. Because of this connection, not to individuals, but to humanity, there's a very interesting and unique narrative interplay with the actual world the characters live in. The story is human. I suppose that's the point. The rest of sci-fi imagines such great technological feats in mere centuries, perhaps even decades. Immortality, or at minimum life enhancement. Teleportation anywhere and everywhere. artificial intelligence so powerful as to be the most dangerous weapon ever conceived. A galaxy full of alien life. And our sci-fi on scales of thousands of years, much less 50,000 as is the full history of humanity within this trilogy, full-on apotheosis. We can scarcely imagine a scenario of so long of human expansion that we don't become godlike in our own right. Asimov's vision is human. Life doesn't change. Petty conveniences, party tricks, and more efficient versions of the technology we currently have, to be sure. Faster than light technology, a necessary facet of galactic spanning civilization. The presence of alien life is never brought up. Its absence is never even questioned. But they remain human, distinctly human. What will life look like in 50,000 years? 1,700 generations? Well, we'll at least have instant disposal of used cigars. On a related note, it's also very 1940s, 1950s. And that makes sense, given that's when they were written and published. It's so interesting, the halfway point between science fiction set at minimum 50,000 years in the future and a galaxy-spanning empire containing some quintillions of people and the artifacts of human past, though recent past. Recording can be done from afar. Efficient spyware, but it is only audio and not visual. Rolls of film are still used. It makes me curious, and I'm certainly not the first one to put this into words, about what we put in our current sci-fi, which will seem so obsolete in the future. What staples of our archetypes will date us so spectacularly? Nuclear technology, the end-all be-all of both weaponry and technology overall, 50,000 years. 50,000 years, and they still have film. That's crazy. Now, alongside this quirk, there are definitely other quirks to Asimov's writing. For example, it appears to me that the most common description Asimov gives of a character is their nose, how it is shaped or how it droops, or the fact that he uses words like calmly or grimly far more than other potential adjectives, a prevalence to the point that it can be noticed, or how the narrator themselves changes over the course of the 3 books. I'm sure it's easier to point out when all 3 books are back to back, but the narrator becomes a character. By this I mean how the narrator has developed into a true narrator. In the first book, events were relayed omnisciently, though usually following one person at a time. In the second book, chapters began having a narrative backdrop in the beginning, more resembling someone telling a story to an audience explicitly. In the third, there is an I that the narrator takes on, and they speak to the audience directly. And the encyclopedia entries at the beginning of some chapters, which, by the way, is such a cool world-building technique, become not just additional information and lore, and importantly thoughts for the reader to keep in mind, but explicit inclusions by the narrator in which they can interact with, talk about. There is a person telling the story by the end of it. And there's a lot more I could say if I went much more in depth, but I won't. I don't know. If I actually get views this time around, I'll do it in the near future. Until that happens, it's a plan for the much later future. For now, this book is an easy 10 out of 10. I love this book. And man, I have become a fanboy for the whole trilogy, if you can tell. I'll definitely be reading more of Asimov's writing in the future. I highly recommend everyone check this out if you can. Again, link in the description to this edition from Barnes & Noble, but then also there should be a link to an online PDF of it from, it'll probably be Anna's archive, I don't know, but that'll be available for you to read. You won't have to buy a book, but it will just be on your screen. I find that annoying. I don't like reading on a screen, but if it's free, I mean, that's what I'll put there. But if you did enjoy this video, or you think this might be something you're interested in, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I get a hit of dopamine every time the numbers go up, and that's almost as good as reading. Almost. So go get on that. You and I both know you have a large reading list to get through. Don't worry, so do I. You can't see it. There is an entire set of shelves over there, and in another room. There's a lot of books in this place, and I have not read through enough of them. So, hopefully, I will be back next week. And if you want to be here, like I said, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you then. But until then, this has been a Tweetbrook Reviews. Keep on reading.